All right, our next speaker is still on the same topic with wood type and also talking research project related to this. But before I talk about the topic itself, I would just like to acknowledge as well that David Sargent, which is the speaker, he's the creative director of Liveworm, which is like an incubator at the Griffith University that does get students to do projects for the industry. And usually at ATypI for the conferences, we always try to get local designers to do the identity for the conference. So it's like always like a premise for this. I've been on these shoes way back in 2015, but always trying to get locals to do it. And in this particular case, we try to get somebody as well that, of course, like a local team. And so we approached David, which was kind enough as well to offer the chance to have the students to work on the identity. So pretty much they run through a project that a lot of students do iterations, like to propose identities. And David was the creative director running the process. And then, so the identity that we're using, I don't know if is Katie Maxfield over here on the room, because I know she's attending the conference. Are you here, Katie? If you are. So, because Katie was the student actually that designed the identity, so the logo, and then of course it was expanded later on with David and his team. And also thank you, David, as well, because I know all the hassle of last minute things and last minute changes, and always being so kind and also helping us to get things done. So now we're gonna see another hat of David, like as a researcher, as a practitioner as well. So welcome, David.
There's notes here, I didn't realize that. Before I begin, thank you. I forget that I'm really short. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which I work on, live on and play on, the Yuggera and Turrbal peoples, and I pay my respects to their elders of the past and present, and extend this respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the audience today. It works. As Christian said, I'm academic at Griffith University down the road, and creative director at Liveworm. Like projects like the branding for ATypI are just amazing for students to get involved in, because it's really, really scary, and they get the experience of taking a brief. They had to present their ideas to an international board, which is huge. So. What I love about our Liveworm program is the confidence that it gives students when they graduate. They sort of understand how everything works in the real world, and then they have, the ability to sort of go, all right, I can actually do this, and nothing sort of fell apart, which I think is really great. And then something which is interesting to me is that I'm also have recently sort of become a rookie typeface designer, and I think that's one of the possibly only good things of the recent pandemic is that a lot of type education, especially sort of recognised larger programs, means, as Stephen sort of mentioned last night in his talk, it means that if you were interested in learning type design, you often had to get on a plane from Australia and uproot your life, learn overseas, and maybe come back, but maybe also never come back. But something which was really interesting about COVID was that a lot of those programs moved online. So I was able to sort of study type design online, which was fantastic. And I think, just to build on Stephen's optimism about type design in Australia, I think once more people and more students sort of understand that they can study design here and then specialise in typeface design, not have to uproot their entire life, I think that's going to see a real explosion in this area. Anyway, that was a long intro. I didn't mean to go that long, but today I'm sort of going to talk about a typeface revival. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about a cautionary tale on how not to go about preparing and writing a proposal for a talk like this, because everything sort of went wrong. But and one of the things that I want to talk about is that when I do give presentations, like in my line of work, I do actually give a lot of presentations, but it's typically after I've completed something. So I've done something, had time to reflect on it, and then I present it. But for some reason, this time, when I wrote this proposal, I did the opposite. So I sort of thought, well, I've got so much time since when I have to write the proposal and when I have to get up here and do this right now. I could do like an amazing project, and it's going to be easy, you know. Heaps of time is the thing that I was thinking. And even when I did write my proposal and people said, wow, that's really ambitious, I thought, no worries. Okay, so then I started to think about, you know, I'm doing a revival. I'm going to do all the characters. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to do alternates. I'm going to make up punctuation, numerals, all of the things that weren't in the source material. You know, why not? Because I had so much time. And if anyone's familiar with this image, the meme, you know what's coming next, which is when I actually had to actually do the project. And the world sort of conspired against me, and once it got accepted, I remember the week it got accepted, shit was crazy at work, and everything sort of accelerated, and I just realised, like, I was not going to have time to do everything that I had sort of promised, and that's when panic sort of sets in. And by the way, like, I'm actually kind of disappointed that this is the first curse used in this conference, because it's Australia, and we're kind of, I always thought we were kind of known for our colourful language. Anyway, maybe some of the future speakers can sort of take that to heart. So anyway, then I started like the bargaining with myself. First thing was like, no way I'm going to do alternates. Next thing was like some more soul searching, realising that it was a really stupid idea anyway. Then I sort of started to continue bargaining and thought about, okay, maybe a reduced character set is the way to go. Then all of a sudden it was March, and I was, okay, this really sucks. Then I thought, okay, let's just do Hamburg fonts. That's probably enough. Then that sort of went by the wayside, and then I realised I can probably get 3 letters done, which I did. So with my revival, I'm going to reframe what my project's about, and let's just call it in progress, or a proof of concept, which is actually, I think it'll go okay. Anyway, so let's sort of talk about and take a few steps back to what sort of inspired this insanity and stupid ambition. I mean, actually, it's a project, not stupidity. Anyway. And the seed for this project was planted a year ago when I read this really fantastic book, Designing Type Revivals by Ricardo Olocco and Patané. Oh, I'm pretty sure I butchered those words, but I've been practicing. I hope that's all right. And it's a fantastic book if you're not familiar. Highly recommend it. But it includes this really detailed case study, and it talks about their super rigorous and methodical process, the decisions that they made when they were creating their own type revival, which is displayed here, Dietna, and it's actually available for free. You can download it from their website. And it comes in 4 optical sizes, super ambitious, and the book sort of goes through every step that they took in incredible depth. So, like I said, really highly recommended if you're interested in these things. And something which is also really helpful is that they define what a type revival is, and they use these 2 examples, Founders Caslon by Justin Howes and Miller by Matthew Carter, as 2 sort of signposts or different approaches that can be defined as typeface revivals. So on the one hand, you have Founders Caslon, which is an exact replica of letters on a printed page. You know, warts and all, whatever can be seen on the page is replicated as close as possible in the digital outlines. And on the other hand, you have what they call a synthetic approach, which I use Miller's example, and the typeface itself is influenced by several sources and combined to become more of an interpretation or an impression or a contemporary revision of those sources. And what they sort of discuss is this idea of in between these 2 signposts is a whole range of different approaches that can be used to create type based on historical sources, and to them they're all defined as type revivals. So after that, after reading that book, I was super pumped to sort of try a revival of my own, and I had worked on a smaller project, but really sort of wanted to delve more into it. And not long after that, I was invited to the Museum of Printing in Armidale for a workshop with Clint Harvey. Thanks, Clint. And Armidale is 6 hours drive from here in New South Wales, and the Printing Museum sits underneath the New England Regional Art Museum, actually a really fantastic museum and a beautiful place in the country. And the majority of the collection in the Printing Museum comprises of Wimble Co printing equipment and type. So Wimble's was a really dominant player in the Asia Pacific region in the late 19th and early 20th century, selling ink, presses, and also type. And the best part of this museum is that a lot of the equipment is still in use via the Black Gully Printmakers Group, which is an active collection of local printmakers, as you can see here in the image. Anyway, during the time of the workshop, I had the luxury of spending a day looking through all of the specimen books they had and then their library of wood type. And when I saw this one, like I stopped dead in my tracks because I thought, you know, this is the one, you know, this is the reason why I'm here to see this. And I thought it was completely different to whatever else was in the museum, and just a really fantastic example that I thought, okay, this is the one that I need to work on. And not only was the shape really dramatic and quite beautiful, the condition of the type actually really told a story because they'd been very well used and possibly misused, and there was something that hadn't always been sitting in a museum. So it was something that had been used, which was fantastic. And there was also no documentation on what the typeface was called, how old it was, or where it had come from. And the Museum of Printing houses many type specimens of Wimble Co, but I looked through them and I couldn't find this particular type. And actually that's quite interesting in itself because one of the interesting aspects of type in colonial Australia was that it was mostly imported, and Wimble Co and their type library consisted of designs imported from Europe and the USA. And in a stroke of marketing genius, many of the faces that were imported were renamed after Australian towns and cities. So even if I did find out what the name was, it wouldn't really be its true name. And as an example, like here's a page from one of their specimen books, and depending on where you're from, like you might recognize this as Century Old Style by ATF or American Type Founders, but in Australia, in this region, it's Canberra Old Style. And they even went to this step of, rather than just importing the type specimens, they reprinted them full of Australian terms and language, which I think is quite a big step to make. But you could see, if you were in this region, you would just identify Canberra Old Style and not understand that it had come from a different place. So even if the typeface had been properly documented, the assigned name would have been a bit of a dead end. Anyway, the mystery was really quickly solved actually that night, and Clint was kind enough to sort of send me this post that he'd seen from the St. Bride Foundation in the UK, and it was just freakish coincidence that it had happened, that they'd just recently posted that. And then first I thought maybe it wasn't the right one, but then after we had a look at it the next day, we determined this was the typeface that we were looking at. And the post was displaying an 1865 type specimen from the London-based foundry W.H. Bonnewell Co. And the particular face that we had was 16-line Roman displayed here. And the way that we identified it was that the capital G in the typeface is quite distinctive. It has a really chunky spur on the bottom there, whereas a lot of the other fat faces of this time have a really quite pointy spur. And as a bit of a side note, when I was putting this presentation together, I realised that the one that we were looking at isn't exactly the same, so there is a little bit of variation in the angles and the thickness of that spur. So I'd be interested if anyone in the audience would know, maybe when we have questions, or you can come see me later, if this sort of, there's tolerance issues where it could be the same face but just produced in a different Anyway, so again, like, this girl is haunting me, but I sort of thought, okay, all these great possibilities on this typeface, and it was definitely the project that I wanted to work on. I had examples of what the type originally looked like, and then we had this collection of really weathered and worn blocks to play with, so, you know, it was on. But for me, like, I think the most interesting aspect was the difference between these two examples. So even though the typeface wasn't Australian in origin, the physical forms at the Museum of Type were inscribed with this really fantastic, rich Australian printing history of being used, and the well-used prints from the set were unique to this particular set and this particular location. And that journey from London to Armidale is what I was thinking about, how I wanted to sort of capture this essence when I was redrawing the forms. And even though we didn't know where it had been in between this time, you know, it ended in Armidale, but no indication of where it came from and where it might have been used. I wanted to sort of at least honour these two sort of states. So I set about creating two sets. I wanted to make one a literal version which captured the type in its current state, and, you know, looking at things like all the serifs being rounded, the chipped edges, the textures, and, you know, the type was so worn that even though we put a whole bunch of ink on it at the time, there's no way to sort of get it to print solid. Like, it was yeah, really sort of messed up. I don't know if that's a technical term, but that's what it was. And then I drew a synthetic version to honour its intended original form, and I was looking at the some bride example to sort of work out what that might be. So here's the two drawings along with the source, and something which I think is important to say is that the vector form of that will never sort of capture the warmth and detail of the printed block. So again, it sort of becomes about capturing the essence of what I could see. So on this page, this is where I would show you the whole typeface and the alternates and numbers and punctuation. Anyway, that never happened. But I think at least I can sort of show you as a proof of concept. I feel like it just does the job now. You can sort of see where I was going, and we can all just imagine what the rest of it is like. So in a way to capture the long history and story of these artifacts, I drew these two states, sort of literal and synthetic, as two linked masters in the same font file. And that meant that you could export it as a variable font, and users can slide and select a version of the choosing between the original synthetic form and its current literal state. So you sort of get stages of decay, I guess you could say, or stages of time. And that was just my way of trying to embed those elements of place and time into this particular outcome. And it also makes a pretty cool animation, as you can sort of see it as like a 100-year time lapse moving forwards, backwards and forwards in time between the original and where it was now. And then if anyone's interested in the, you can see why I was so distraught about this project. This is what it looks like. It's built on a 2000 UPM grid, and each letter has over 100 elements, between 110 and 120. And my original plan was to build a collection of components that I could then repeat for different letter forms. Actually, my original plan was to use autotrace, and that didn't work either. So I drew this manually. But when I started to do the components and repeat them across the letter forms, I could start to see those repeated shapes, which kind of felt against the spirit of the project. So I opted to draw each one of these individually and then sort of refer back to the source backwards and forwards. And then this screen, if anyone's worked with multiple masters before, like where you get this red line here, if you don't know this pain, the red line appears when the masters don't align anymore. I saw this a lot And again, like if you're sort of sitting here going, this guy has no idea how to fucking build variable type, that's true. But please come and see me in the break if you have like a better way to do it, and I will buy you a beer. Okay, so future plans. I do want to continue this project after maybe some therapy, and now that I've sort of worked a bit of a better process, and if other people have even better processes, I would love to hear it. But also, I'm not racing against the clock, which is great. I do want to add those alternates and represent every version of the letterforms that I found at Armidale, and I think it'll be a really great project to then give back to the Printing Museum and the Art Museum at Armidale as something that they could distribute or possibly use, which I think would be great. Okay, thank you.
All right, so David, your therapy session starts now. Questions?
Dave, you must work pretty quickly because you only had the H done last week.
I had the other letters half finished. Yeah.
Questions? We have a little time for questions.
I feel like there was a bit of implied knowledge there with that symbol thing that had all of the numbers and stuff. I have no idea what we were looking at. Everyone laughed when it came onto the screen. What was that?
Oh, okay. That's in glyphs. That's the outline of the font.
So that's okay. Thank you, because
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep. So that's sort of showing the two versions. So the thing with multiple masters and linking them is that you need to have the same amount of points on both, and if you don't have the same amount of points, it just stops working. And when you've got so many of them, trying to work out which one isn't working is challenging.
No, look, thank you for your honesty, coming to the stage and explaining your journey through this, and you will finish it, and it's just great to actually see that sometimes it just takes a bit of time. So well done. Thank you for that.
Hello. In the spirit of embarrassing David even further, which is what I have dedicated my life to, he stands up on the stage and says he's an emerging font designer. This young man just got ATypI accepted, like 4 days ago to Google Fonts, and so I just demand that you all download it immediately and you stop calling yourself a burgeoning font designer because you've been Googled. So congratulations, David.
Hi, David. Thanks very much. I'm interested with the variable type decision because I imagine that that's obviously adding a huge amount of work as opposed to having, as you said, the literal version and then the synthetic version. Do you think that by reducing the option of making it variable, that would actually speed up the process and you could achieve a finished product, or is the fact that it's variable a big part of what you wanted to achieve with the project?
It would definitely make it easier. The variable thing is what I was interested in, though, because I wanted to sort of try to link those two locations and two sort of states together. So that's what I sort of set out to do, and I think not doing that would be not doing it justice.
Hi, David. I was wondering from like a logistical point of view with the transition between these kind of ragged original version and the crisp new version. I can kind of imagine with the holes or the speckles and the texture inside the type, it would just be a matter of kind of like putting those beziers on top of each other until there's no shape there anymore. But how do you handle, and with the contour, the outer extremity of the letter, if it was a straight line, it would be a matter of just kind of like aligning them all on a straight line. But how do you handle like an indent like on the P when there's like a white jagged thing coming in from the side and it's on a curve? How do you iron out the the curve on the outer side?
First of all, I'm so glad that you asked me the question, Dave, because multiple people have told me today that we sound exactly the same. So it's and people are saying they're talking about good questions that I'd asked, and I'm like, I didn't ask any questions. With a lot of trial and error, essentially. So my original plan was to draw the worn version first, and then sort of move everything back into the original sort of form. But I found that didn't work particularly well, so I went the other way. And essentially, if you look really, really closely at those curves, it is sort of there are sort of slight bumps in the original one, because you are sort of adding more points along those curves, so it sort of gets a little bit ragged, and it's just a balancing act between trying to get it as good as possible on that state, while also having enough points that you can then move them in for the worn version. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Is there any technology with variable fonts to have the shape, the white shape that's being subtracted from the black shape, as a separate thing kind of hovering over a smooth curve?
Yes,
Yeah.
I tried that too, and again, if someone has a better idea. But what happens then when you've got the other shape and then you have it on the outside, it turns into the black, the positive. So
Right.
I think that's what you're asking. But
Well,
I'm
I'm imagining like a white shape, like as you would in Illustrator almost, and then it kind of subtracts from a clean curve. Like it's I don't know if you can even do that with variable fonts though, but I wondered if that was possible.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. And yeah, that's something that I did try, and I couldn't get it to work.
All right,
But
thanks.
yeah, because that would be, again, easier. Yeah.
So we have room for one more question.
Hi there. My question's two-pronged. The first is, it's a beautiful typeface in existence in the woodblock. Surprised, has there been any other versions that have been explored prior, like in terms of developing it into a font, like even in other countries? And then second question is, have you trademarked the cap G yet? Because I might be on your tail.
No, I haven't seen any. And again, like, this is a really great audience to sort of, if anyone has seen one, I'd love to sort of know if it's been done before, but none that I could find in my research. And again, like that G being quite distinctive in this genre was a great blessing, because then when I was looking at other fat faces that had been revived, like they all sort of had that really pointy spur. So that's how I sort of thought that no one else had done it. Yeah.
At this time, we're going to move into our next speaker, and I'd like to thank David for all of his help.